In this video, we're going to talk about how to make more plays and get more points as a AAA or junior defenseman by studying Lane Hutson. The problem for most AAA and junior players is that most coaches actually don't encourage you to play offensively. They use fear and threat of benching you to force you to make the simple play. However, if all you do is just dump the puck in the corner and take weak shots from the blue line whenever you're under pressure, you're never going to stand out. So the real question is, what do top defensemen do like Lane Hutson that helps them play more offensively without losing coaches' trust so they can generate more points? And I'm not going to talk about the obvious stuff like just be a good skater, work on your mechanics, just shoot the puck more, just have natural talent. I'm going to break down the 4 biggest things you can do as a AAA or junior defenseman so you can start to produce more points more consistently. And these are things that took me 10 years of studying thousands of hours of what the best NHL defensemen do, studying hundreds of sports psychology models, and working with players at every level on understanding how to make better decisions so that they can really play at their best and produce more offense. The first thing is something I call the coaching problem. And really what it is that coaches are very bad at programming players' minds to make better decisions on the ice, to trust themselves, play more offensive. And what this means is that players need to do something a little different. And now, I'm not here to bash all coaches, but I am here to bash the bad ones. And I've heard so many coaches say stuff like this John Tortorella clip.
What was your assessment of where things were?
Soft. One guy played, the goalie.
How encouraging is it that he came in like that cold and was able to?
Terrific. He's the only guy that played.
Are you concerned at all that tonight it kind of lingered again, that you just said it was a soft game per se?
Not the whole game and not the whole group. There are certain people that they don't have a clue how to play or just don't have it in them to play in these type of situations. And this is why I'm glad we're playing them, because we have to figure things out as far as what we're going to become as a team here. That was embarrassing in the second period for the Philadelphia Flyer uniform, the way we played. Embarrassing. High marks as far as how we came back in the third. Some guys.
So first he says, okay, no one played well. Then he says, okay, some guys played well. And then he says, no one did anything. And then he says, some guys did some. And then it's just the goalie. And it's just this kind of emotional mess of words. And for players, this stuff is super hard to deal with when your coach is giving this kind of emotional, just thrashing and yelling all the time. And often when anybody gets emotional, they stop thinking logically. And this happens to coaches too. And fundamentally, this is the old style of coaching. But the problem is it's still super prominent in hockey. Coaches who just use yelling and anger and trying to scare you into doing things better, it's a punishment tactic as opposed to actually encouraging you to make better plays. And I'm not here to sugarcoat things, but from my psychological perspective, this stuff is super damaging because all it does is make players want to avoid mistakes instead of actually making the plays they want to make, and it limits their development. And so the problem is that head coaches are going to adjust your ice time to try to reinforce good or bad habits, or they're going to yell at you to try to punish you when you make a bad play, but they don't often guide defensemen to actually grow their game and expand. And a lot of players and parents come to me and say, hey, I feel like my coach basically just tells me what to do, but they don't really tell me how or explain the deeper roots of how to get there or why we're doing this. So they don't explain to players what their role really is and how to actually play it effectively, like what it looks like on the ice besides just, play hard, be heavy, just make the simple play. And they don't explain actual principles of how to start to apply better IQ tactics so they can be smarter players on the ice. They just say, make this play, don't make that play. And I think this comes down to a lot of coaches don't have a lot of time. They have full-time jobs. And it's also just really difficult to try to really go in depth with a player and explain these concepts. So players are kind of left in this weird place of, I don't really know what to improve because I'm not really getting coached. I'm just getting kind of told, hey, go do this thing better, don't do that thing. And ultimately, I know the feeling of this. It can make hockey much less fun because you feel like you're constantly almost battling with the coach and your egos are always colliding as opposed to feeling like you're improving and building. So how do we handle this? Well, fundamentally, you have to learn to become your own coach. A player has to actually figure out how to develop themselves. And the thing is that parents have to take this responsibility on at a younger age. But as a player starts to move into that kind of 12 to 15 range, a player has to start to say, I'm going to coach myself. I'm going to make my own adjustments and I'm going to learn how to develop on my own. And whenever a coach tells me something, I know how to take that and then turn it into my own development, basically. And so when a coach says, don't do this or do this, I have to go figure out the depth. I have to go figure out the why. I have to figure out the how. And that's a responsibility that a lot of players don't take on. But if you want to do this, this is where the second principle comes in, which is having a better mental game. Now, if you look at Hughes, you look at Makar, you look at the Hutson brothers, they are incredibly skilled skaters. They have impressive hands. They're super good with their skills overall. But even with their talent, if they continuously played with fear of messing up, they made bad choices, then they just turn pucks over, they wouldn't be dominating like they do. So the mental game has 2 things you really need to understand: deep confidence and self-belief, and how to actually use skill. So not just jamming the puck into pressure, not just dumping it away every time you're in a situation where you're not sure what to do. So it requires not just confidence, but it requires hockey IQ and decision-making that actually occurs on an instinctual level. Just look at this play from Lane Hutson.
Lost it. Lane Hutson follows up, goes to the into it, stops. Now the other way. Hutson still on the puck. He'll find one there.
So he makes that first move, which is already sweet. But then as he rolls behind the net, most players would try to force a wraparound or they just throw it out front. But for Hutson, there's no rush. There's no, I have to make this play at this exact time. He's watching, he's waiting, he's moving into space. And as he does, he's making everybody else make mistakes and get out of position. So he calmly cuts back. He looks for an option. He sees nothing. So he cuts back again. Then as another defender approaches him, he doesn't panic, just calmly protects it. He moves up the wall. He makes a play. And you can see that as he makes that play, he looks up top. He kind of opens up the space, then he passes it through the seam, and it's a good opportunity. And I know he's insanely skilled, but it doesn't take an insane amount of skill to pull this off in most leagues. But most players have something I call a ticking timer in their head. They feel like they need to just throw the puck away as quickly as possible. You can think of the best offensive defensemen like elite race car drivers driving 200 miles an hour. Everything's happening very quickly, but they're so focused and so dialed, the game can actually slow down for them. And so if you're a player who has the skill, you're fast, you're powerful, you're strong, but you don't find you're able to make the plays you want, well, it probably comes down to kind of a few things. One, it's that your mindset and your mentality isn't really to attack, which we'll talk about in a second. The second is you're not confident, you don't trust yourself, so you have fear, you have doubt, you have hesitation, which we'll also talk about, or you're actually just not sure what decisions to make. You're like, I don't know which play to make, I don't have good decision-making principles. It's like a driver who doesn't have good driving technique, right? You can have a really fast car, but then once you get going 200 miles an hour, you're gonna be just swerving all over the road. So you need to figure out these three things, essentially, to decide what it needs to be prioritized. In our programs, we focus on all three because having all three allows you the fastest acceleration. Because even if you have one or two, all three simultaneously getting better allows you to become dominant because, again, you have the ability. You just need to unlock the decision-making and the mentality and the confidence and trust and removing the fear to allow you to play at 200 miles an hour. Now, the next principle is the offensive mindset. So that's what I was just touching on there. And so when I say offensive mindset, what I mean is creating offense requires a clear shift in how you think about yourself and how you think about the game. Most players see the game as something I call an avoid mindset. So they're always trying to avoid mistakes, right? You don't want to make the wrong play. You don't want to get in trouble. You don't want to be embarrassed. You don't want to be an idiot. You don't want to let yourself or your teammates or your coach down. But if you want to start getting more points, then you have to shift into something I call an attack mindset. And if you look at Lane Hutson, he almost always has an attack mindset. Instead of looking at the play and thinking, let's not mess this up, the way that Hutson looks at it is, how can I make a play here? You want to think, what can I create? What can I do? How can I produce something? You want to be attacking the thing. And so the best way to do this, to simplify it down, is you want to look at the player in front of you and you want to think, I'm going to attack you. I'm going to beat you here. And if you look at Lane Hutson, he's not a big guy, and clearly he can still do this. He still attacks players. He still makes players look stupid because he uses his skill. He makes the right decisions, puts people out of position, exposes their weak points, and then he's able to attack. And so a helpful tactic for this is something I learned from Xander from Conscious Hockey, and he calls it obstacle focus. So whenever you have the puck, the first thing you should look for is the closest player to you, or the obstacle. And at first it's going to seem weird. You'd think, oh, I should look for the open space, but ultimately that doesn't really make sense, because when you look for space, it means you're trying to go to safety instead of looking for what's the danger and then let's attack the danger, let's manipulate the danger. So once you start doing this, your mindset is going to naturally shift from somebody who's trying to get away and try to avoid players and avoid mistakes to, how can I manipulate players? How can I attack them? This is how the best offensive defensemen and offensive players in general think. Now, in order to do that, you do have to accept some level of failure. You're not going to be perfect. You will have times where you mess up, but the key is understanding how to manage risk from both an emotional perspective and from a tactical perspective. So that's where we get into principle number 4, risk management. So watch these plays from Lane Hutson and notice what you see in it. So as you're watching them, you'll probably start to notice that he doesn't rush the shot. He doesn't rush a pass. He brings the puck into a dangerous area. He starts to threaten a shot. He starts to threaten a good pass, but he doesn't bring it right to the D-man. He uses little fakes, little shifts of weight, little pumps to create a little bit of extra space and to move defenders where he wants. And then as the pass opens up, he makes it. And if he sees a pass open right away, he makes it. He doesn't hesitate. And that's what elite confidence looks like, is knowing I can bring it into space, I can take a risk, and I'm gonna still find a way to make a play. And the key to this mindset is realizing that from an emotion perspective, you probably are gonna mess up about 20% of the time when you try to make plays and bring it into danger to hold it a little bit extra. But the key is knowing when to take risk. That's what risk management really is. It's knowing what time in the game it is and how much risk you need to take if your team really needs to score, or if you're up and taking a risk is not worth it. It's knowing where you are in the zone, knowing, okay, if I turn it over below the goal line, it's different than if I turn it over on the blue line and I'm the last person back, right? Which also connects to just knowing who's behind you. If you're the last line of defense, you probably want to make a little bit of a different decision in terms of risk. And so being able to manage this and have programmed instincts of what to look for is key. And you can prepare these before you get into a game. You just have to develop a mental system to actually train these principles and wire them into your mind. And that's the thing. If you want to take risks, if you want to be the player who starts to get noticed and stands out, you have to eventually take risks that sometimes will lead to consequences. So you have to accept before you go into a game that you may let your teammates down, you may let your coaches down, you may let your parents down, you may not hit your standard, but you have to be willing to go into that place and accept you might get yelled at. You might have your coaches say, hey, you're not going out next shift. Your teammates might look down at you or laugh at you. But if you're willing to do that, you have to have the courage to do that. You have to be willing to take on responsibility of making plays. So you just have to decide, is the reward worth it for you? And one of the biggest things you can start to do is start visualizing and imagining, okay, what would it be like if I did make these plays? Really see yourself doing it, and your brain will start to realize, look, I do want to take these risks. I want to be that person. And I'm not telling you to be an idiot who just throws the puck around and dangles on the blue line. You got to be smart about it. You need to learn an actual decision-making system, but you have to shift your mindset into, I'm okay with taking some level of risk. That's going to be the only way that you get to be that type of player you want to be. And if you don't develop that courage to start taking risks, if you keep dumping the puck away, you're never going to be the player who gets noticed. You're never going to be the player who gets opportunities to play D1, to play pro at the level you want to play. Understand that you have to figure this out. So if you're a defenseman who wants to stop playing it safe, stop getting overlooked, and finally start standing out to coaches and scouts, remember these 4 things. Don't rely on your coaches to spoon feed you. You have to learn to coach yourself. This is the responsibility you have to take on. Number 2 is you have to build a strong mental game so you can be calm, creative, confident under pressure. And when you develop this, now you become somebody who has both the physical ability and the mental ability. Number 3 is you have to take a clear offensive attack mindset where you focus on the obstacle in front of you and start to really manipulate and control the people you're playing against. And number 4, you have to train your brain to manage risks and not just dump the puck away, but be okay with taking on some level of challenge and have the courage to be okay with things might go wrong. It might be your fault, but that's what taking leadership in your career looks like. And that's the difference between being another average defenseman or being the guy who controls the game from the blue line and in the neutral zone. And if you love this video and you want to go deeper and actually develop the mental software and the scoring instincts that we've taught to pro, D1, and elite junior players, you can click the first link below. That's where you'll actually see it's pinned as a comment, and it's also in the description. And you can learn more about how you can actually work with us to build a personalized system and help you really master this in just 8 weeks. Or if you're not ready for that yet and you just want to learn more about us and you just want to start working on your mental game, we have a free masterclass below where you can start learning the foundations of how to meditate, how to develop an elite mindset, how to visualize, and really it's going to give you the worksheets, the guided mental drills, and just everything you need to begin your mental training journey. Either way, the tools are there. The only question is, how far do you want to take your game? Do you really want to start working on a mental game? And comment below if there's any other questions you have so I can help. I hope you have a great day, great week. I hope the season's going well for you, and I'll talk to you soon.